What's going on, you awesome creatives? In today's video we're going to be looking at a section and rendering it out in Photoshop. So this video is going to be a bit of a long one. You guys can check the timestamp down below, but if you guys are after the quick time lapse, I've left a link in the description down below, so jump over that if you're not interested in the real time. Some of the basics that we're going to be covering in this video is exporting from AutoCAD, different textures, paintbrushes, and a very basic lighting setup, as well as layer masks and adjustments. So let's jump into Photoshop. Alright, I've already exported from AutoCAD, but I'll quickly show you guys how I did it. So this is the quick model I did up last night. I just did it up as quick as I could, just so we had some content to smash out today. I've only got four layers here. Ignore the CAD blocks. I was going to use them. They're a great resource if you don't know about them. Definitely check them out. We have a few different things. I've obviously got the line work, and then turn the current layer off. Alright, so we've got the line work there. Moving on, we've then got a solid hatch. I'm just going to turn that off again quickly. We've then got a kind of scattered hatch with all the earth and concrete and whatnot, and then we've got some interior kind of interior kind of sketching out, just basic preliminary drawing so far. So each of these I've jumped into our layout one and I've exported these as PDFs. If you're not sure how to do this, I have done a video up previously, so I'll leave that up. Make sure you jump onto the card up in the top right hand corner and click over that and find out how to do it properly. So anyway, let's close this down. I'm not going to save it. And let's jump into Photoshop and get started. So I've already imported these in. You'll probably find that when you first do it, these are coming all over the place and you've actually got to align them correctly. Alright, a few of the other things that I've got open here. Obviously I've got a background, alright, I've put that in. And I've got a few layer masks here as well, which I'll go over in a second. And I've renamed each of these. So we've got our internal line work, our hatch, our line work, and our solid hatch over the top. And I've kind of stacked these up the way I want them. So I've got that solid kind of grey in the background. If we have a quick look at our layer masks, I'll just show you guys this really quickly. I've just set these up so that we can move through this tutorial a little bit quicker and not focus so much time on the tedious stuff. So we've got a building layer mask there, highlighted in red, and I've got the ground selected. Two different shades so that I can easily select them if I want to. Moving on, we've then got the upper part of the image kind of masked out. And then when we kind of get into our texturing, I've kind of got the corridor there, bottom left room, top left room, bottom right little panels there because they're slightly different. Top right, obviously, excluding the truss. And then the main panels excluding the truss and the cross because obviously that's going to be in front of the panels that we put in. So that's kind of the basic kind of setup that we've got for today's kind of lesson. So we'll jump into it. I know we've kind of spent a little bit of time on the intro already, but like I said, this is going to be real time, so it is going to be a little bit longer. So consider jumping over the time lapse if that interests you. And if you guys want to see more of these, consider subscribing down below. And don't forget to leave a comment or a like if you need help with anything at all. So let's jump into this, starting with the groundwork to begin with. I'm just going to close off these layer masks really quickly. And I'll tell you what, we'll start on these now. I want to punch up this kind of lighting, this line weights just a little bit. So what I can do is double click on this, come into our layer styles and turn on our stroke. Now I'm only going to bump it up by 1 pixel because I know that's going to be enough. Alright, turn it on and you can already see that it's already kind of making it a little bit more punchy. I'm also going to do that for the hatch, but instead of going into it again, I can just hold down Alt and click and drag this up and add in a hatch effect, and you can kind of see already that that's kind of punching that up as well. For the internal line work, right, I want to punch this up as well, but not quite as much. So what I'm going to do is 1 pixel and maybe just make it 20% instead of the 100 that we were doing on the other two. Hit OK, and you can kind of see, let's turn off the effect. You can kind of see the difference, maybe. Let's see. Let's jump that up a little bit more. Alright, so obviously we don't want that dark. Let's drop it down to 25%. Alright, so it's a little bit more punchy, but not quite. What was okay? So you can kind of definitely see a noticeable difference there now. Right, so our kind of base image there is ready to go, and that's why I kind of prepare it in AutoCAD. That's my go-to starting location before I actually start modeling. If you guys want a video on my workplace process, leave a comment down below, and I'll try and look into it in the future. For now, let's jump into our ground and our kind of background and get started on that. Alright, so staying with a white grunge texture. I prefer white grungy textures for my ground. I don't know, I've always kind of used them, and I'm just going to scale these down and throw it down a little bit. Alright, now we're just going to duplicate this really quickly, and I might just Command T that and just flip it horizontally as well, just so we get a little bit of variation there, and then duplicate it again. Alright, so we've got that there. What I'm going to do is just throw on a quick layer mask on each of these, and with a black paintbrush we're just going to have a nice soft brush, and we're just going to kind of brush out these we're just going to brush out these kind of like these lines of joining, right? Because obviously we don't want that. Alright, so that's kind of flowing a little bit more seamlessly. Now what we can do is select all of those, right click and merge our layers there. Alright, and this is kind of why I set up our layer mask earlier. So now I can just jump down in and grab our layer mask there and put it up and over the top. And there we've got it, our kind of layer mask just kind of snaps onto the top. So I'm not going to spend too much time on layer masks because they're very basic, and I don't want to hold you guys up too much. Alright, so we got that done. I'm actually going to drop this down below our base work and put it in a new folder as well. Alright, so we're going to call this background elements. Alright, and put our ground in there. Next up, let's have a quick look at our background of trees that we want to put in, just to give a little bit of context to the site. So I've got these kind of autumn ones. Now holding down Alt and Shift to keep it proportionate and scale into the center. We're just going to scale this down really quickly, and that will do. And I'm just going to duplicate these a couple times, and just kind of try and position it where you want it. Alright, that'll do. And what I'm going to do is Command J to duplicate it twice, and then I can just kind of move it across. And I'm going to Command T this, flip horizontal, just so that I can line it up a little bit with where we left it. Just so it matches up a little bit better. Right, and our last one, we're going to drag this over and join it up. This one here, I'm not going to concern too much about that line joining up because I know it's going to be hidden with the layer mask of the building. But let's kind of have a look at this one and fix it up a tad bit. Alright, so we can kind of drag this over. And obviously we don't want it to look completely identical. So I'm just going to put it somewhere close. And then we're just going to again use a layer mask. And we're just going to paint out a little bit of that. Oh, let's jump into our other layer. We're going to put a layer mask on this, and we're just going to paint out this just slightly with a soft brush, just to kind of join them up. Alright, and that will do. Then we can select all those guys, and so all three of those. Again, we can merge the layers, and I'm gonna, obviously you guys will want to do a layer mask and kind of crop out your building, but for me I'm just going to drag up the layer masks that I had before. So basically that's what we're cropping out, just so that our trees are in the background, they're not kind of coming through that. And I'm just going to throw it in underneath the ground so that it kind of sits up like that. That's kind of done, and then drop our layer down underneath just to hide the rest of those trees out. Alright, so I'm pretty sure that you guys would agree our ground layer at the moment is pretty basic. So what we're going to do is create a new layer. We're going to jump into our paintbrushes, and what we're going to go down into is this thick and heavy brushes. Right, and I'm just going to hit a pen so that they get added to the bottom here. Now we've got these 4 different brushes. Right, now when I'm using brushes, I prefer to use AstroPad, which is a little app on my iPad Pro. If you guys want a review of this, let me know. I'm just gonna open it up. So just ignore this really quickly. And all right, cool. So it's up and running, up on my iPad now. Now I'm not too sure. Let's just fix this really quickly. Okay, so there's an issue with our layer mask, and that's why we've got that tree there. So if we grab our layer mask, what we can do is just grab our lasso tool, and we're just going to polygon lasso tool, and we're just going to crop this out. Now, like I was saying, black obviously hides and white shows. So if we grab our brush and make sure it's a black, then we can start to hide this. So it's kind of coming up red now because I've got that toggled on. But now you can kind of see that it's hidden there. And unfortunately, for this, it's kind of showing it there as well. So we've just got to adjust that also. I'm going to just toggle on my layer mask again. And we're just going to adjust this really quickly before moving on. Alright, and just get rid of that. Alright, cool. So our layer mask is now fixed up, and I can turn that off again. Alright, so like I was saying, our ground is a little bit dodgy at the moment. So what I'm going to do is just add in a little bit of texture. Jump up our brush a little bit, and what I might do is just rotate this slightly. Decrease this slightly, and rotate it. Alright, so what I'm after is just these kind of little spicks and specks there. So yep, I'm happy enough with that. And what we can then do is just start to paint this in. And I'm just being pretty rough here, guys. I'm not too concerned with it. I'm just trying to get that little bit of roughness happening. And it doesn't really matter if I go over the lines a little bit or into the building. Alright, we're just trying to add a little bit of texture into it. Alright, and that will pretty much do. So now what I can do is grab our layer mask. I'm going to actually drop the opacity of this back down slightly, just initially. And I'm going to throw a layer mask on this as well. And from here, I can go out into this layer mask by hitting Alt and W. Not Alt and W, Alt and clicking on it. And we can grab our magic wand then by hitting W, selecting all those white areas. And then we can kind of jump back into this layer mask. And we can kind of hide all that. Oh, we grabbed the wrong one. So let's jump into our building again. We actually want this black area because that's where we're hiding. And we can again hide it with black. Right, so when we jump back onto our actual layer, it's now no longer in there, which is exactly what we wanted. So it's no longer coming up into the basement. And then I can kind of play a little bit more with these brush presets. And just start to hide out little areas that I don't want maybe. And I can actually grab different brush, rotate it up. What I'm going to do is drop our opacity down to 20 and maybe just play slightly. And we're just trying to get a little bit of consistency here. So at the moment this is pretty straggly. I'm not actually overly happy with it. And that's almost getting to the stage where I'm happy enough with it. So we've got different tones coming through. Yeah, I think in the preview we kind of had it a little bit more straggly than that. But I actually don't mind it like this, a little bit more consistent. And I'm just going to hide off this right hand side a little bit more. Alright, So that's pretty much our ground sorted. So, and we've got our trees kind of put in, but I'm not overly happy with them just yet. I think they're too punchy. They're going to take away from our building. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop our opacity just back slightly, right? But what I really want to do is jump up into an adjustment. What we're going to do is do a hue and saturation adjustment, and we're just going to drop the saturation back just so they're not quite as bold and vibrant. Alright, that's probably a little bit too far. Let's punch it up just slightly, because we want to still maintain a little bit of colour. So that's going to do me. I'm happy enough with that. I'm just going to hold down Alt, make sure this little symbol comes up over the layer, and click that so it's only going to apply to what's underneath. Alright, so I'm happy enough with that. So we've got our line weights now sorted, we've now got our ground sorted, and we've got our trees sorted as well. So what we might actually look at now is putting in our sky, right? And I'm just going to put these into a layer, or into a group, I should say, just to kind of keep my layers more organised. Alright, so these two are my ground ones. So that's our ground. And we're just going to call that forest backdrop. And then finally we're going to have one last one for our sky. Alright, so I'm going to kind of create a autumny, rainy, stormy kind of feeling with this. So I've got these kind of clouds here. And I'm just going to scale this up. What we're going to do is now throw a layer mask on that. And we're just going to grab a very basic brush. And grab with a black. And we're going to start to paint this away. Make sure your opacity is up again. Alright guys, so we've got a rough sky there. I'm actually going to dump out some of the opacity though, because I don't really want it quite as vibrant. And what I'm next going to do is, okay, that'll do for now. I'm going to add in a new layer here guys. What I'm going to do is grab our paint brushes, and I've got a few cloud brushes here. So you guys can find these from around the web. Make sure it's on a white. And now we can just kind of punch these up just a little bit. And I'm just playing with opacity and flow, just so we've got a little bit more depth into the sky. Just grabbing different cloud brushes here. And I am happy enough with that. And again, I'm just going to dump the opacity of this back down just slightly again. Just so that the clouds, you can kind of make them out, but they're more of an abstract form than anything kind of serious. Alright, so that's our ground done, our background, and our sky done. So we're kind of starting to build this up. So next up, we're going to actually jump into the internals of the building and start looking at that. Alright, so we can actually close down our background elements, and we can start a new layer. We're going to call this one internals. And this is where we're going to start doing our texturing before we start moving into our lighting too much. And then following this, we'll obviously deal with our vegetation as well. Alright, so we're going to start with this kind of texture, timber cladding, as though we've kind of grabbed it from the local forest. And I'm just going to place this down in here. Now I already put kind of guides in here. These like linings are about 150 mil apart, so I kind of know the width of these that I want to do. And that's probably going to suit me quite well there. And what I'm going to do is grab my internal layer mask, and what I'm going to do is grab our bottom left, slide that up, put it over the top. Alright, so it just snaps in. Obviously, if you guys don't have these pre-made layer masks, you're not going to be able to do that. But that is completely fine. And again, what I'm going to do is just copy that up and put it on up. And we're going to delete that layer mask off and put in the proper one that we're doing. I'm just going to adjust that just slightly. And I'm probably just going to extend this out just slightly as well. So the widths aren't going to kind of match up as nicely as I want, but we're just going to keep this moving. Alright, cool. So that's our two sightings there. Looking into our corridor now, what we can do is dump in our next one. This is a pretty big image, far bigger than we want. So again, holding down Alt and Shift, scale inwards to the center, and proportionately, we're going to do that. Oh, that didn't go quite in as far as we wanted. Alright, that will do. Throw that up. Make sure we've got all our claddings down in our internals kind of folder. And I'm going to adjust this with a curves modifier as well. But first up, let's get this sorted. Oh, we don't want to select them all, just that one layer. And again, I'm going to scale this down just slightly. That will do. Now holding down Hit V for our move tool, hold down Alt, and this will just allow us to duplicate it and move it as necessary. This middle one I am going to flip vertically, just so we've got a little bit of difference there. Now what I'm going to do is then merge all of those and grab my corridor layer mask. I'll show you guys how this all works. Obviously you guys should probably know layer masks alright, but we're just going to grab our marquee tool pretty much in like that, grab our polygon lasso tool and just add this little knock in here. And now we can click on our layer mask and there it is. So if you guys don't have pre-organized layer masks like I do, then it's just that simple. And then obviously down in here, alright, we just want to paint that black. Alright, so done. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is, with that one, I'm going to bump up that opacity again. Not fussed on this color, so what I can actually do is grab our curves adjustment down the bottom right hand corner and scroll down, and I can start adjusting this to where I actually see fit. Alright, so I'm happy enough with that dark kind of wood that I was after, just by kind of dropping this down and dropping this black down as well. But I'm still going to just lower the opacity just slightly. Alright, now what we're going to do is just look at these two top right hand corners before we move into this area here. I'm going to pause it there just for the time being